Well, I'm in the process of filming the speeder truck YouTube video, the part 2 of the weathering, and it's coming along pretty good. And I'm happy with the way it's turning out. Although, to be honest, I'm getting a little bored of building this. I'm ready to finish it up and move on. But it's turning out pretty much how I had envisioned. So I'm pretty happy with it. But I'm also behind on my filming, especially for Patreon stuff, because normally I film Patreon stuff a week or even 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time. And this is Saturday of Memorial Day. Today is, I don't even know what today is, but this is Saturday before Memorial Day here in the U.S. And normally I would have the video ready to go, but I'm just starting to film this one. So I'm not going to be working on the speeder truck itself, nor am I going to be working on the what is the flying thing called, the Fledermaus. Had to look down at the box. I couldn't remember. I'm not going to be working on that. What I need to do is I need to work on the base for this. I'm not going to show that on YouTube. I need to work on the base for this. And but also just, I think, this is just going to be one of those ramble videos. So if you're not a big fan of just me rambling for a while, I apologize. But you may hear it in my voice. I'm over my cold. I don't feel bad. But I've noticed as I get older, when I get like a sinus, and maybe you're this way, when I get like a sinus infection or something going on with my sinuses, sometimes it takes a month for my sinuses to clear up back to where I feel like I'm normal again. So that's just, I'm just kind of going through that, and hopefully I'll stop having to deal with recurring cold for a while. And now that it's starting to get warm weather, I'd like to not feel like I have a winter cold. Now, not much of the base is going to be seen, so I'm not going to really be able to put much on it in terms of, vertical features, no big rocks or anything like that. I mean, maybe, something along here, but it's just going to be, mostly just texture, because as you see, it's a pretty close, tight fit on there. So especially right here below these intakes, and I think that's the worst placement ever for intakes, because it's floating above the ground, and it's got to be stirring up dust as it's going along. And I just can't imagine seems like they would have put them on top, but whatever. But I've got to build the base up on there, and I've also got to remember that for this is a game piece, and they put these what they call firing arcs on here, and I guess it's got to do with the directions that it fires or something. I don't understand it from the game, but I'll have to make sure that there's some indication of these. So I always make sure to clear out. You don't have to have the whole firing arc visible, but someone who plays the game told me as long as there's some indication of where they are, so that they can do whatever it has to do with the game. I don't understand that part, but if it makes it more sellable, I'll take their word for it. So I've got to keep that into account. Take that into account also. Now, one thing I am going to do is I want to cut in the firing arcs right here along the sides, so that I won't have to have so much of them cleaned out along here. And it'll also help me see, because I'm not going to put any texture paste along the side, it'll also help me see when I'm trying to clean them up where they're at. That's one of the things that I've run into in the past when building these Star Wars Legion kits, is sometimes I'll get the paste, the basing paste on the side, but then I won't be able to see where the firing arc is because there's not enough of an indication. So this will help me see where that is. So I'm just going to use that razor saw to cut that in. And then I'm going to find a file. There, I found the file I was looking for. It's a triangular file. I have a whole bunch of these little files like that. I think I got them at Hobby Lobby or something like that. They're just metal, and there's various shapes. There's squares, there's flat ones, there's round ones, there's triangular like this, but they're good for if you just create a little groove in something like this. They're good for opening it up just a little bit so that you get a little extra width to it, but not, making a huge mark in it. So this is going to work really well, or at least that's what I'm telling myself. Now I'll clean up the debris with a little extra thin cement. And hopefully, is that in focus? Yeah. Hopefully that looks like it's supposed to be there. I just got to do the other 4 or the other 3. Now my idea for the base is that this speeder truck is going to be operating on a desert planet, but it's a high desert area, meaning there's going to be some snow on it. I thought that would be a nice kind of not contradiction, but because those things exist, but I thought it would be kind of a nice, kind of a cool look, an unusual look to have a desert base, but then have snow on it. So initially, I just need to get some texture on it. So I'm going to use this Vallejo earth texture. It's an acrylic product, brown earth. It looks like really thick peanut butter. Doesn't taste like it though. But what I'm going to do is just take a big synthetic brush and just start putting this stuff on here. Let me get this focused in so it's not jumping around there. Sometimes if I don't lock the focus in, if I'm doing something like this, the camera wants to keep focusing on my hand as it bounces around, so it starts looking like a, 1970s Black Sabbath video. If you've ever watched the Iron Man video from Sabbath many years ago, back when, the best special effects they had for videos was just moving the camera in and out. But anyway, I said I was going to ramble, so while I'm doing this, I'm going to ramble. And I do this, I guess, sort of in lieu of, I'm not on social media, so the stuff that I might normally post on might be the kind of stuff that I'd post on social media. Maybe I'll just say here, and if you want to discuss it below. But I was having a really good discussion with some friends about a recent video from, you may be familiar with the mini painter named Squidmar. Oh, it's not his name, but that's what he calls. His name is Emil, I can't remember his last name. He's in Sweden. Nice guy. I've never met him personally, but, just really pleasant, fun guy to watch. But we were talking about that a lot of miniature painting has gone from being, okay, here's how you paint stuff, to being the equivalent of professional wrestling. They call professional wrestling now sports entertainment. That it's not, not to say that professional wrestling isn't physical. It certainly is. And people really do get hurt, when Undertaker threw Mick Foley off the top of the 20-foot high cage in the Hell in a Cell match, and he landed on the Spanish announcer's table. That was real. You don't fake that. But anyway, so many of these mini painters, him and Miniac, and there's others, not all of them certainly, but those are two prominent ones. Jump cut there to clear my throat. those are two prominent ones that I think they've kind of gone over from here's how you paint stuff to what I didn't make this up. I heard somebody describe it this way, but they said they've become to miniature painting what Jackass was to YouTube or to MTV or wherever they used to show it. You know, I mean, they're not necessarily doing stunts like, you know, like they did on Jackass. All right, now I've got all this gunk on here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get a brush full of water, and I'm going to start putting some water on here to start moderating these peaks and valleys and things like that. Water will just help you work it around and stuff like that. It can be a little bit of a mess, but I think doing this is fun. I enjoy doing it. But anyway, they just kind of get to be painting entertainment. Like they did one a while back, which, you know, they had people challenge them to do painting in challenging situations. So they were like painting outdoors in a blizzard, and painting while getting a tattoo, and painting while like riding in a car or something. I mean, you know, it can be entertaining to watch, and they tend to make it, he and his partner Lucas tend to make it funny. No, I know that, I know what it is. They've got to make a living. He makes a living from his YouTube channel, you know, and he's married. He's got, I don't remember his wife's name, but you know, you can find pictures of them online every now and then. But he's got a, you know, wife, I think 3 or 4 daughters, you know, got a cute little family, and you know, he's got to make a living. So you go where the money is. And, he's a wonderful painter, but, you know, we were just talking about that so much of the mini painting world, what's popular now is not actually painting minis, not instruction on painting minis, but rather just stuff where, you know, you get other stuff, and oh yeah, they happen to be painting minis. They did, their most recent video was one where they were trying out cheap brushes that got 1-star reviews on Amazon. And I mean, they basically came to the conclusion that these were cheap brushes that probably deserved a 1-star on Amazon. And you know, they would open up these brushes and they would kind of make, you know, laugh at the reviews, and then talk about how terrible the brushes were, and tried them out and painted a mini with them. But I thought, you know, this is a perfect example of where so much of stuff that used to be helpful on YouTube is now getting into the, well, we've got to make a living category, because, well, instead of showing, okay, yeah, these brushes are bad, but here's how you can make them work for you, or here's some ways to you know, make the best of what you got if this is all you can afford. Because a lot of folks, I mean, I know, you know, if you're going to spend $9 on a pack of 50 brushes, you can probably spend $9 on a pack of 3 brushes that are better quality, of course. But, you know, people don't know that necessarily. And so, you know, what could have been helpful was, well, here's a way that you can make the best of these brushes, or here's what you need to do to your paint. So when you have a brush that doesn't work like a better brush, you know, how's that going to be? But instead they just did their little thing of all of the painting was just musical vignettes, and just showing them painting and smiling at the camera, and every now and then making a brief comment about how bad the brushes were. And, you know, I get, not often, because not a lot of people watch my videos, but now and again people say, oh, your videos are too long, or, you know, there's too much talking. But I'm like, yeah, but I'm trying to be different. I'm trying to put information out that hopefully will be helpful to folks, and they'll actually walk away with, more information than just, look at that. Bad brushes are bad. Or it would have been nice if they would have made some recommendations about, I don't want this stuff to dry out, so let me just go ahead and put the lid on. To make some recommendations about, okay, here are some low cost brushes that are a better quality that might be an option. And here's a way that you can, when you have these cheaper synthetic brushes, which tend to have a shorter life, here's a way of extending their life. Here's some things you can do to preserve them. Or here's where they do have value, so that if you have your good brushes, well, then here's some things that you can do with your cheap brushes to help extend the life of your good brushes. So I watched it, and it was like, it wasn't, I didn't gather anything from it. I mean, I didn't learn. There was nothing useful in it, which I think was a problem. But at the same time, I was mildly entertained. I mean, I was sitting here one evening and I just watched it, and quite honestly, about halfway through it, I drifted off to sleep and woke up about 20 minutes later, and I had to back it up a little bit and watch that part again. But anyway, just something to discuss, or I mean, what do you think? I mean, I know that there's a place for entertainment. I'm cleaning all this mud off the brush now. I think I'm just going to leave it sitting in the cup to let it soak for a while I do this. But what do you think? I mean, I know there's a place for entertainment, obviously, but I wonder how much is, and it does kind of bug me. Not so much for me. I mean, I've made my shot, took my shot at it. Never really took off for me, and so I've just kind of learned to live with, be thankful for what you have. But for guys like say Sarastro, or to a lesser extent Duncan Rhodes, he's got so much name recognition that I mean, he fairly well, he gets a lot of subscribers and stuff like that. But I've noticed, like Sarastro, he's just stopped really kind of growing much in his channel growth. Yet I think his stuff is quite often some of the most helpful that you're going to find, because he does talk about, here's how you use the brush, here's how you do this to blend in highlights, or to get in this kind of thing or that kind of thing, to really learn something about painting. He does a good job of that. I'm obviously cutting up a cork. Well, may not be obvious. I don't know that this is the best cork to use for this, because it looks like I'm just, doesn't that look like a piece of cheese? Like if you had a small section of cheese. I may need to find another cork. Hang on. I think this one will work better. When I'm looking for corks, I look for ones that when you cut them open, see the difference? So, yeah. I mean, these work for smaller things, and you can kind of start pulling them apart and all of that. But a cork like this, you can rough up the edges with it and make little things, little rocks and chunks like that, just almost automatically, and it starts looking pretty good really easily. But I was talking about Sarastro and Duncan Rhodes, certainly, but specifically about Sarastro, because I remember a few years ago when I first started getting into to painting and exploring the gaming world. This paste is still wet, so I'm just putting it in there, and that'll just hold it in place, hopefully. Usually it does. But I remember, specifically watching, I think, Miniac when he was early on, when he was just kind of coming onto the scene. And, he was talking about, they all hope they can be like Sarastro, because at the time, Sarastro was putting out really the best miniature painting videos you could find, and just had a ton of them. And they were, his stuff has always been very helpful, very instructional, very education oriented. I think the word that quite often many of the British miniature channels that do that, they call it tuition, and but ironically, as guys like Miniac have gone more into the painting entertainment area, then it's kind of taken the focus off of guys like Sarastro. And now some of them, I think, just kind of walk the line fairly well. I mean, I don't watch him often, but the last time I watched Miniac's buddy Ninjon, John Ninas, I think that's his actual name. His videos, if I remember right, tended to be a reasonable amount of, instruction and just, what I'll call just kind of silliness. And he kind of did a good balance of it. And every now and then, Squidmar or Miniac, they may do something like that's got some entertainment value and some value in terms of actual painting instruction and all of that. But it just disappoints me that, and I guess that's just the nature of things, that people want to learn stuff, but they get diverted by entertainment. So if you're making, like I said before, if you're making your living at it, then you go where the money is, and I guess it just is what it is. Now I'm going to put in some grass tufts. These are from Citadel, and I probably paid way too much for them, but it was convenient because I was at the well, I'm kind of ruining this one, ain't I? I was at the Warhammer store and saw them on there, and they come in this plastic pack, and I learned later I could have gotten some similar kind of tufts and paid far less money for them, but I got them, so I use them, and I've actually gotten quite a bit of use out of them. I mean, I don't want to act like it was a total waste of money, but because I've gotten, I mean, you can see how many I've used there, and I've never gotten the picked up any of just the static grass that you sprinkle on, because I've just never been attracted to taking the time to get one of those static grass applicators so that the stuff stands up straight. And I've never quite liked the look of, if you don't use that, it just kind of goes in and it's falling in all sorts of directions. I've seen Martin Kovacs take that stuff, and he'll put a drop of glue on and just take a pinch of it and put it in there and stand it up himself. And that works pretty good too. But I've just tended to take this lazy course of action and put that on like that. Here again, my thinking is, if you've ever been in a desert area, unless it's just one of those pure sand deserts where there's no vegetation, if it's a high desert, generally you see a little bit of vegetation. And once this dries, I'm going to prime it so it'll all be one color, and then I'm going to paint everything. And so when I paint it, I'm going to make sure these tufts of grass aren't such bright green, but rather, look like they're, the kind of, there's plant life that lives in the desert, and it spends most of its time just kind of waiting for the rain, and it's pretty beat up looking most of the time. And then when it rains, all of a sudden there's some places in the desert that are just covered in flowers and growth and all of that. And then when it dries out 3 or 4 days later, it's just back to, making do. So that's what I'm thinking with these. But really my goal is not even so much, certainly not realism, because this is, Star Wars universe, so you can make it up as you go along. And if you ever watched the Clone Wars, you know that there were some planets that they went to that just had all sorts of strange things going on. But I just want it to be slightly interesting. So I'm going to take a break here and let this dry, and then I'll probably go out and prime it, and then I'll be back to show the painting. All right, let me catch you up on where I'm at. It's been several hours since that last segment was filmed. What I did was after I finished filming, before I started the process of drying, which I will describe in a moment, I used a little thinned PVA glue, just thinned it with water, and just brushed on over and around the rocks, just to make sure that they were in place solidly. So I just didn't want them to come loose. And then when I went out this morning to go work in the yard, I set a little fan up and just did this on the floor and put it in front of it like that. And when I would come in and get a glass of water or do something like that, I would turn it 90 degrees, and then next time I'd come in, I'd turn it 90 degrees, and I just kept doing that. And within a few hours, it dried fairly quickly. Because that paste, sometimes, if you just let it sit out and there's no airflow, it can take a long time to dry, surprisingly long. Overnight usually does it, but I knew I wanted to be able to film this afternoon. It's in the afternoon now, but just putting that in front of it worked fine, and I got it dried up. Now, once it was dry, I primed it with this Vallejo hobby paint, which they call it hobby paint, but you can use it as paint, you can use it as primer, you can use it as both. This has become the only rattle can primer I use. I've tried all the others that, you can name them, I've tried them. And there's some that I like. I like Tamiya, I like Mr. Surfacer's sprays. The Citadels are okay. Sometimes they're a little too easy to get orange peel, and they're kind of expensive. I like this one because it goes on, easy, dries really fast. It's got more fluid ounces in it than the large Citadel bottles. It's got twice as much as Tamiya or Mr. Surfacer, and I think these cans are like 10 or 12 bucks, which is cheaper by far than Games Workshop, and about the same price as the Tamiya stuff and all that. So it's a good buy, and they work really well. They dry quick. They go on pretty smooth. You really got to flood this stuff on to get it to get some orange peel. And so now if I want some rattle can primer, I just get this. The color that I used is Bone White from their Fantasy range, but honestly, if you called this, World War II range, you could call it, Dunkelgelb or something like that. It's the same thing. I just look at it and go, that's the color it looks like sand. So nothing special about the color that I went with.
Now let me take a step that I should have done before priming, but I forgot, and that's going around and slicing off this these edges here. And this stuff, this Vallejo paste, when it's dry, it's rubbery. So it's better to clean it up beforehand. I just forgot, and then didn't clean it up when I primed it, before I primed it. So let me get this cut off and get back to it. All right, now I'm going to paint everything with Iraqi sand, and let's put it in here, thin it down. Oh, it's probably 2 parts paint, 1 part water, but the paint was already kind of thin, so when I'm painting texture stuff like this, I tend to just dab it on, because sometimes if you paint actual brush strokes, one, you can get brush strokes, and two, it can make things come loose. So I find that dabbing it on tends to work better. Now it means you put a lot of paint on it. You may have to fill your palette up a few times. You know, maybe I need to switch to, no, I don't want to switch to a dry brush. I started to think, you know, maybe I need to switch to something like this because it covers more space. But the problem with those is it soaks up so much paint that you end up running out way before you should, because a third of the paint is up in the bristles. So I'll just go with this. It'll take a little longer, but I can live with that. I'm just going through and going to put this on like that. Notice that I'm painting the rocks, the tufts of desert grass. Everything's going to get a coat of this, because even if I paint stuff a different color, I want there to be some kind of, you know, a unifying undertone. This is a dusty, dry place, wherever this planet is. So there's a gazillion in the Star Wars universe, so you pick it, you name it. I just thought of something. Earlier I'd mentioned that I used some PVA glue to cover the rocks and to, you know, make sure they were glued down. There was a dual purpose in that. I forgot to mention it. I also put it over the rocks, completely over them, put a fairly heavy coat on them just to kind of seal them in. It's not a perfect sealant. You'd have to probably put on multiple coats, but if you put something down to seal the rocks themselves, then when you start painting them like this, they don't just totally absorb all the paint, and you have to just keep putting coat after coat of paint on, because this is pretty much working between the PVA glue, the primer, and now this is pretty much working in one coat. Now if you want to see if you've glued all your rocks down satisfactorily, turn on your hair dryer. Now I want to add some shading in, so I'm going to use this contrast paint from Citadel, Skeleton Horde. Now, there's nothing magic here about using a contrast paint. I'm just using it as a shade or wash, and I've thinned it. 2 parts contrast paint, 1 part water, roughly. Normally I would thin contrast paints with contrast medium, because if you're using them to paint a mini or anything else for that matter, the contrast medium is going to keep the properties of the contrast paint working like it's supposed to. In this case, because I'm using it as a shade, I'm not too worried about it. Now, it is going to darken the base down. That's something I expected. That's one of the reasons I went with such a light color to start with, because I knew that initially it was going to be really light, and then it was going to darken up a bit, and then I will do some steps after this to lighten it back down just a little bit, do some dry brushing, and then some more dry brushing. Notice I'm not really getting it up on the rocks. Those are going to be a slightly different color. I may use contrast paint for those too. We shall see. But I've had a lot of folks say, oh, I guess I need to go out and buy contrast paints. Not really. I mean, you know, if you want to try them, go try them. Although, don't forget the Vallejo makes, they call them express colors. They basically work the same way. They're quite a bit cheaper, and You get a little more with them, if I remember right. But they work really well. The only reason I didn't use that was because I didn't have a Vallejo Express color that worked for this, so I'm just going with this. But you can do the same kind of thing just by taking any acrylic wash or even acrylic paint. You know, you could take acrylic paint, thin it with water, put in just a little bit of matte medium or something like that, some flow improver, whatever, and just do the same thing. Just slosh it on like this. So while it's convenient to have contrast paints or shades or, you know, express colors for something like this, it's certainly not a requirement. There's plenty of ways of getting this done. For me, it's just a matter of convenience.
Well, one thing I will say about Squidmar, he doesn't forget to clip on his microphone. I'm sorry about that. All right, now I'm going to do some dry brushing with, once again, Iraqi sand. And this is just to bring up a little more color. I'm not worried about there being a lot of deep shading. If I wanted to do that, I could go in and, you know, take some washes and put in, you know, specific areas. But this is a relatively flat landscape. If you're putting on that texture paste and you want really undulating land, to use a $64 word, you probably want to put some stuff down beforehand. I generally use something like the Tamiya 2-part epoxy or something like that, green stuff, something like that, that will allow me to build in some contours and stuff like that. So, and you can certainly do the Martin Kovacs method and, you know, go to something a little more robust, like, you know, styrofoam, or that foam he uses where you cut that. I mean, you can get some really impressive landscapes doing that. That's not something I've jumped on yet, mainly because I've never really felt drawn to doing, what do you call them, dioramas, vignettes, things like that. I mean, if it's got a base like this and makes it easy, then yeah, I'll do that. I'm going ahead and hitting the rocks also. I want to go ahead and get some little bit of highlighting on them too. Having to be careful because I don't want to knock them off. I don't know if you noticed earlier, but something broke off of one of the rocks, and that'll happen when you're using cork like that. But let me get this finished. Move on to the next step. Now for painting the rocks, I'm using 2 parts Apothecary White, 2 parts Gryph-Charger Gray, and 1 part Contrast Medium. Now, nothing really special about those colors. I just wanted something that was a blue-gray. So that's my thinking behind that. And them just wanting to be different, you know. In a region like this, I know that the rocks would probably be something sandstone looking or something like that, but I just think this will look cool. I like these. When I've done bluish rocks in the past, I just like the way they look. I think when they dry, they have a, you know, kind of a, I don't know, kind of a slatish look to them. Usually, if I'm doing rocks, I tend to do a few more varied colors on them, still leaning towards the blue-gray, but I'm just keeping it simple with this one, and it's going to go with this color. All right, I like the look of those rocks. They got just a touch of blue to them, but they're still grayish looking. They stand out against the background, and I have to every time I do this, I always have to be careful to go and look at it like this, because you can see a ton of places when you're doing that you might miss, because there's so many facets to the rocks. I'm already seeing a few that I missed, but I'm not going to worry too much about them. Now I'm going to use this technical paint from Citadel called Van Halen Blizzard. It's Valhalla Blizzard, I know. But I call it Van Halen Blizzard. And all it is, hang on, let me get this lid propped open. It's just a white paste like this. Almost looks like baking powder or something like that. Now, keep in mind when you put it on, it will shrink up. So if you're looking at it thinking, okay, that's how it's going to look when it's done, it will shrink up a little bit, sometimes quite a bit, and it can take several hours, depending on. I mean, you can hit it with a hairdryer and get it to go faster, but I like it. I mean, there's plenty of other snow products to use. I tend to have a lot of Citadel products because, when I was doing a bunch of Warhammer stuff, I tried to stick to Citadel stuff just because I know that's what a lot of folks use. And even if they don't use it, they know the equivalents for various Warhammer products and things like that. But as I've talked about, there's a Warhammer store on my drive home. It's only about a mile out of the way. So the store that carries other products that I could use is quite a bit further out of the way. So I just use this. But certainly if you're going to want to have a bunch of snow, you're probably going to get something that's a little more efficient than this small jar. I think my amount of snow for this is going to be limited to what I've got left in the jar. I'm going to have to look down into it and see how much I've got so that I don't run out. Because I don't want it to be fully covered in snow. I just want to suggest that there has been snow and it's starting to melt. And, the way I'm imagining it is that it's a very inhospitable environment that, overnight snow blows in, and then by morning it starts melting, and by the middle of the day in the afternoon it's completely dry and arid and barren, and then overnight snow comes back in. It's probably not going to happen in the real world, but Star Wars universe, who knows? So anyway, let me get this put on, and that'll just about wrap it up. All right, well, I've got that on there, pretty much like I want. Like I said, I didn't want to completely cover it. The way this Van Halen Blizzard works, I think I mentioned it earlier, is as you put it on, and then as it dries, it kind of shrinks down. It thins out in a way. If you've put a really thin coating in, it'll start kind of pulling apart. So it will show, more of what's in the background. So like if you were using this and you wanted a true winter base, you would want to put it down over white or gray or something like that. But if you, like I want, if you want it to be obviously melting or, retreating snow or however you want to call it, where the base is showing, then, you know, you could do it like this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this dry for several hours, and it'll get as dry as it's going to get. I hit it with a hair dryer just to get it started, but it'll take a little while to work, and then I'll come back and evaluate if I want to put any more down. I can certainly do that, and you can apply it with you know, say a large brush or something like that, and spread it around. I just found this tool like this to be fairly easy to use, and I'll just see how it goes, and you know, I may leave it like it is. If it ends up like I want, I may add one or two more coats just in various places. And if you really want to get fancy, you can think about, like, if the direction the wind is going, you know, you want the prevailing wind to go. Do you want to have snow build up on that side of rocks? I'm not thinking about that for this one, but you can really get fancy with it. I'll probably go in and put a few more dabs into the bushes to look like the snow is in the bushes, because you know, that just makes sense to me. But overall, I like the look of this. I mean, the model will, here, let me put it on here. Hang on just a second. I mean, you can see the model's going to cover up most of it. So that's why I'm not too worried about the base, really, because this is going to be the focus. And I will go back and paint the rim with probably black gray. I like the rims to just be kind of very dark. But yeah, I like the way this looks. You can put, if you wanted to, you know, make the snow look dirtier, you could put some, you know, a very light gray wash over it in some areas, and then maybe go back and put some more snow over it. I mean, you can play with all sorts of effects. One thing I've never played with this Valhalla Blizzard is seeing what happens if you thin it out. You know, that may ruin the effect. It may give it a pretty good look. I may thin some of it out and just stick it in the middle of the base, since it's going to be covered up, and just see how that looks. But it's a good product, and fairly easy to come by. Well, I guess that'll wrap up this building a base / ramble / production gaff. And as always, thank you so much for being a patron. My family and I are really grateful for the support you give us. It's very practical for us. It's very, very helpful for us as a family. So thank you for that. And you know my sentiments. If you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. And you know, really think about that when you're working on your projects. You know, it's supposed to be about fun. And if something's not fun, we'll switch to something else, or change the direction you're doing it, or whatever. You know, really focus on the fun. I think it transforms the hobby. Happy day to you, friends. Bye-bye.